We are back on It's Always Game Day in Cincinnati. Lindsay Patterson, Mike Santagata here. Mike, how are you?
Doing pretty good. Tired. How are you?
Tired, 100%. That's the thing. And for me, it's always those primetime games because I can't go to sleep right when the game is over. So it kind of lingers over to Tuesday. And that's just kind of how I'm feeling right now. And it's winter weather in Cincinnati.
Yeah, it's dark at 4:30, whenever, I don't know. And yeah, I did a post game show right after, so I did not get to bed right away either. And we both work morning jobs, so
Yep.
it didn't go well the next day.
Yeah, well, and the Cincinnati Bengals, they beat the Cowboys. It was such a weird game overall when you think about the offense and then the defense. And then obviously it kind of felt like in the spring, the Dallas and Bengals game was going to mean a little more come December on Monday Night Football. And it really doesn't mean a whole lot for both teams. Of course, it's kind of nice, honestly, to watch the final now 4 games of the season to hopefully watch some wins, to be honest with you. Yeah, if they lose, their draft pick is a little bit better. But last night I enjoyed it a little bit when you think about the offense finding a way to get the go-ahead touchdown at the end, special teams coming up big, defense at times stepped up in the second half. But let's start with the offense right now. And, this offensive side has been a lot of fun to watch, from Ja'Marr Chase to Joe Burrow, Chase Brown, interior offensive line. That's a whole nother story because Joe Burrow was running for his life a little bit. But, in the beginning, I thought, could have capitalized in the red zone. They weren't able to. They kicked the field goal, and then Joe Burrow probably wants his interception throwback. But overall, if you think about the duo of Joe Burrow and Ja'Marr Chase, and maybe while you're watching the rest of the season, because they are so special and there are awards up for the duo, what did you think about Joe and Ja'Marr last night?
I mean, they were awesome. What struck me was, wow, Mike Zimmer did not care about Ja'Marr Chase in this game. And that was true on the film. It wasn't just like, oh, he got 18 targets because Burrow's forcing him. Like, yeah, a little bit. But at the same time, Zimmer just stuck playing stuff that, I just don't know. He did not have a bracket or a cloud or, like any type of double team on Ja'Marr Chase throughout this game. And that's how you end up with 18 targets and blowing the game wide open. Even the final play, they played cover one and just expected their corner, not even using Trevon Diggs. They used, I think it was Jordan Lewis or maybe it was somebody else, to try to cover Ja'Marr Chase. It didn't work. It went for a touchdown. But, man, that blew my mind watching this, because I think of Mike Zimmer as, maybe I'm wrong, but before the season, I thought Mike Zimmer was a heck of a defensive coordinator, heck of a defensive play caller. And in this game, it was like he had never seen the Bengals offense the past 3 years and how you may combat that. So that was like my initial takeaway, just because I was surprised at how what I thought was not a great game plan. Some of it was because like the pressure stuff was good, but then when you're going to only send 4, you got to have Ja'Marr Chase accounted for and move from there, not send 4 and, well, we play this coverage because we play this coverage. But other than that, yeah, I thought Ja'Marr Chase was incredible. And overcoming, it felt like both a drop early and the ball that hit him in the head instead of coming down with a touchdown on that one, to have a sensational game. And I thought Joe Burrow was very good in this game too. I don't think it was his best performance. And one of the main reasons is just that interception was terrible on multiple fronts, where bad read, because you got quarters, and Peyton Manning was talking about from the Manning cast. That's Higgins all the way. Like, the only reason he's stuck on Chase is because he loves Chase and tries to force it in there. Higgins open, should have threw it that way. But even with the idea, like, he made the wrong read, a perfect throw, the ball would hit Ja'Marr Chase in the hands. He'd have a chance to catch it. And the ball, he airmailed it. He overthrew that thing right to the safety. So no real excuses for him with an interception. It was bad on every front that you can imagine. And Burrow looked upset afterward. I think that was the one where the camera comes saying, "What are you doing, Joe?" It's like, that's how everybody should feel when they make a mistake like that. So it was very human to see that reaction, because I do that all the time. Like, what am I doing?
No, I agree, because at the end of the day, like, look, Joe has been almost perfect this season. He's been a lot of fun to watch. He's having a MVP year. If they had a winning record, we'd probably be putting him in that conversation on the national stage. But I agree with you, kind of just painting to him on the sideline. He knew. He's like, look, That was my bad. I was focusing in on the same receiver. Don't blame him because he obviously has that connection with Ja'Marr Chase, but a ball that he would want back. I think overall, when you think about Joe's performance in the second half, is look, it's so hard for me to criticize the offense in these last few weeks. Honestly, the last 2 months of football, just the way Joe has been playing. But it was kind of nice. And yes, I know special teams helped assist with this for Joe and Ja'Marr to connect for the walk off. It was just nice to see in that moment because you're like, okay, they get one more shot to go win this game, or maybe it's going to go to overtime, depending on what Cooper Rush does. And the defense was able to stop them. So for me, it was kind of nice to see. I know a lot of people kind of compared that go-ahead touchdown to the one we saw in New Orleans a couple years ago with Joe and Ja'Marr. And the thing about Joe and Ja'Marr is playing like a wide receiver one right now. We could say Justin Jefferson and Ja'Marr Chase all day. It doesn't really matter to me. They're two really good wide receivers. But I just feel like, and maybe when you went back and you watched the tape, the connection, the chemistry Joe and Ja'Marr have, it really just feels different. And I don't know what it looks like with another quarterback or another receiver out there, but I don't know. The duo is really fun to watch. And yes, the season is not going as planned and it feels like a failure, disappointment. But just watching the two of them connect, I'm rooting for Ja'Marr to get 20 touchdowns. I think he's been absolutely incredible. I know the Triple Crown is still on the table for him and he currently leads that. But, I'll enjoy watching them. It's a disappointment it won't be in the playoffs, but, for these next 4 games, they can do some incredible, crazy things the rest of the way.
Yeah. I mean, the chemistry sticks out. It felt to me like the Cowboys played a lot of what I would think of as isolation coverage on the outside. They played some Tampa 2 and cover 2 type of situations too, but a lot of times that's why you got so many outs, so many comebacks was just, well, like that guy might have help over the middle of the field, or maybe the middle of the field is a little congested. But at the end of the day, these coverages are one-on-one on the outside. So let's just hammer it. Let's just hammer out routes, just stuff that breaks out or stops, because that's going to put you one-on-one with that corner. The corner has help if you go inside. The corner has help if you go deep on some of those 2-man situations. But they don't have help on that out route. They don't have help on short stop routes. They had some stuff go over the middle of the field too. I think that was more specific when they were getting some of those Tampa looks. But I think it stood out there because you have to know when your guy is going to break, when he's going to move, how deep he's going to run his route. And Burrow's able to throw the ball to Chase well before he gets out of his break and put that ball out there with anticipation to not allow the cornerback to recover. So what I saw was a lot of chemistry. I saw, and the other thing with Ja'Marr Chase is, and this showed up on that last run, is he's really built like a running back. Mm-hmm. You look at his legs, his calves. This is something I noticed back when he was a draft prospect, because he did a picture next to Devonta Smith and Justin Jefferson. Mm-hmm. And those guys looked like wide receivers. And Ja'Marr Chase, shorter than them, so much thicker legs than them, that it just looked like he looks like a running back compared to them. And that's what he plays like when he gets the ball in his hands too, where he is a wide receiver first. He's a great wide receiver. But when you get a ball and Burrow threw it to the inside to help him turn around quicker and get upfield, but he is so fast to catch that ball, turn into a runner, make a move. He moves like a running back. And then the acceleration to just go 0 to 60 like that and get upfield and just break everybody's angle on the way up the field. Can't believe Zimmer called cover 1 in that situation, but we've moved on. It was like the Saints one, because it was along the outside, thrown with anticipation, put in a place where Chase can get it and get yards after catch on an out-breaking route. And Chase did the rest, where he's just so much more explosive and faster than the defense, but also he makes that first guy miss. And that's what happened on that play, where the defender comes crashing in thinking like, well, I'm just going to go make the stop now. And Chase has already become a runner. He's already changed direction and he's already moved upfield. He's beat. So yeah, I think this was a pretty special game to watch if you love Ja'Marr Chase and Joe Burrow.
Yeah, I just one quick comparison. We'll move on to other guys on the offense before we flip to the defensive side. It kind of reminded me with Zimmer that it was like Spag's first game against Ja'Marr Chase. And
but man, at least they were rookies in that game, right?
Agree. It was an absolute. My mind is blown. And Spags learned to never do that again. Yeah. But you would think Zimmer as an experienced DC that he would have known that that was an awful decision. But for sports fans and Bengals fans, and I know everybody really enjoyed Jamar's special night. It was awesome to see. But let's talk a little T. Higgins. I want to get to Joe's comments at the end of our podcast, but I thought it'd be a little bit of a bigger night for T. I know you're going to focus on Ja'Marr Chase when the quarterback's throwing him the ball. There was a couple drops in there. Wish T could have had back. Anything really stand up for T last night?
It felt like the confidence in him and from him was kind of shaken a little bit by his early drop. And that's why I brought up Ja'Marr Chase's, where Ja'Marr Chase had the early drop and it didn't matter. Like Joe Burrow kept throwing it to him and he kept making good on it. T. Higgins had an early drop and it felt like he was kind of struggling to find his footing after that, where I don't think, it was terrible, but I do think it was noticeable the difference between how he's played all year and how he played in this game. So wasn't great. I don't think it's that important. I mean, guys have off days.
No.
It is what it is. But yeah, not the best day from T. It felt like his confidence was shot a little bit from that early drop, and then wasn't able to get it back on any of the other plays that were happening, like that go ball, that fade. He didn't make the play on that, and he couldn't come down with another ball. Move on. I think if you're T. Higgins, you just move on. You had a bad game.
Yeah, he'll have another one, and these next four, it could be against the Titans. We'll see what that matchup looks like later this week when we give a little preview for that game. But Chase Brown, I want to give him some credit. It's so fun to watch Chase Brown out there, not only on the ground, but even as a receiving type of running back. You mentioned Ja'Marr Chase kind of built like a running back. There was a block. I want to say he was one of the blockers on the touchdown for Chase Brown in the first half, which was really special and awesome to see. Both of them kind of help each other out when it comes to the blocking game. And just a really special running back. I'm excited to see him continue to evolve with this offense. He's explosive. Every time he gets the ball, I'm expecting like 5 to 10 or maybe even an end zone touchdown run. But he's been really fun to watch. And I know a lot of I'm not a fantasy football player, but I know a lot of fantasy owners are huge Chase Brown fans. But what did you think of him last night? Just kind of overall at this point of the season.
I tried to get Chase Brown everywhere in fantasy. I only got him in one league, and that league is a league I did terrible in because I drafted some busts in the early rounds. So I was a little upset I couldn't get him because I wanted to also make a post. I was just like, this is what this Bengals analyst thinks will happen this year, and there's just going to be Chase Brown on every team. But then I couldn't do it. I guess I was right, but he's been better than I thought he would be. He's been the workhorse, and I think part of the reason he got the workhorse role, where Khalil Herbert got a little bit in there, but he was a workhorse, and I think he's getting better in pass protection. I want to see it tested a little bit more before I make some claim that he's some great pass protector now, but he's very willing, and he's not making mistakes right now. I think that's huge, where he's able to be trusted in those scenarios. That's going to get you on the field. We talked about it with Joe Mixon for years, and now here's Chase Brown. He might have a better year this season than Joe Mixon ever had as a Bengal, just in terms of total yardage, because he's able to see the field so often. Also pointing out, worth noting, he has a better success rate this year than Joe Mixon has this year. So he's having a pretty darn good year. And I think it's worth talking about because he hasn't had great blocking this season. I feel like the run blocking for the Bengals offensive line is pretty bad. I think in this game it was a little bit better. And part of me looks at the Cowboys. I just gotta go like, I don't think the Bengals offensive line is suddenly pretty good. So Mozzie Smith, what happened? And the other part was just like that the Osa guy. He's gonna be a big free agent, and I didn't think he was bad in this game, but I did come away thinking like, yeah. He's a solid starter. Like, I don't think we're missing. Like, I don't think if the Bengals didn't sign him in free agency for $12 million, whatever per year, that you go like, shoot, we just missed a superstar. I think you're missing a solid starter, but I don't think you're missing a superstar based off of this game. He had some plays, but I thought he would do better if, some of the analytics loved him. So I was going in with an open mind thinking like maybe this guy could be the Bengals defensive tackle pickup this offseason. I don't know anymore. But yeah, Chase Brown, pretty good. They should have called that a touchdown on the field because that celebration was going to be nice. And
I know. You should to challenge that touchdown when there's a billion cameras at AT&T and just the NFL overall. I was so bummed. I know somebody told me that the official fell down, so it was hard for him to see if it was a touchdown. But you have cameras everywhere that that was
Your
really
rule, your rule as an official that falls down is to rule the player down. Like,
Oh,
what,
it was so questionable that Zach Taylor had to challenge that. Look, we can talk about officials and face mask and all that, but I'm sure plenty of people have already heard enough when it comes to officiating. But that was a really bummer for Chase. I'm glad they counted the touchdown because it felt like an obvious one. But yeah, offensively, the interior still a concern. That's going to be a talking point going into the offseason when you look at guys like Kappa and Volson. I don't know how you roll the both of them out next year. Maybe it's one or the other, and they pick up someone in free agency, or maybe it's a rookie interior offensive lineman in the draft. But yeah, the O line, Joe's doing what he can with what he has out there, and the same thing for Chase Brown. So maybe that looks a little bit different going into 2025. But offensively, they found a way to win, and that's what the most important thing was. I mean, there were many times that I was watching the second half of that game thinking, the offense has a chance right here. Oh no, the defense is probably going to let them score. They're going to go down the field and score. This is how the game ends, until the special teams situation happened, and
disaster.
that was crazy. That never happens for the Cincinnati Bengals this year. It's
No, they're the
always
ones doing that.
always the opposite. It is the what happened to the Cowboys is what the Cincinnati Bengals do to end a game. So absolutely crazy. Good on special teams. Nick Vigil, former Bengal, with the block, and his teammate, really unfortunate, helped the Cincinnati Bengals get the ball back, and they were able to drive with the go ahead. But let's flip to the defensive side, because I think a lot of people kind of watching this last stretch of games, again, a 3% chance to make the playoffs. So it's really about the youth movement, who's going to be out there. And they've struggled all season long. Early on, Cooper Rush running down the field saying, all right, we've seen this story before. Everything looks pretty normal. The defense is struggling. But we saw some younger guys out there. And I think that was huge to see. We still don't know what we have of Miles Murphy going into year 2, but he was out there more than Sam Hubbard was. And Joseph Osai, there could be a conversation of maybe the Cincinnati Bengals could bring Joseph Osai back. He's having a really strong second half of the season. No, it's not saying a lot when you look at the defensive side of the ball, but when you watch the other side, seeing some of the youth out there and some of the other guys stepping up, having better games than normal, what stood out for you?
Yeah, Osai did a pretty good job on the interior in this game, but you think of the agent, you think of also just, man, would you really just want to run it back with these guys? Like, we keep talking about, like, they're the worst pass rushing unit in the league. It's like, yeah, let's just bring them all back. That's
the worst thing that could happen if they went out.
Yeah, but I feel like I do know what Murphy is this season, and it's not great that he didn't really progress much from last season to this season. He feels about the same player, an amazing get off, that he was faster than Trey Hendrickson off the ball in this game, according to Next Gen Stats. And I think when you watch it, it makes sense like that. He fires off the ball, and he's huge. He's huge to be able to do that, because most of the guys that do that are smaller. Like Trey is an anomaly. Miles is an anomaly. Myles Garrett, also an anomaly. But he just has no move to get the hands off of him. And I think he would know this too. It's just, what is the next step? And just like last year, he needs to be able to get the offensive lineman's hands off of him. This has created a weird little statistical quirk where he's getting pressure, according to a lot of places, but he's not. He generated 3 pressures, according to Next Gen Stats, in this game, for example. And according to, I think, ESPN, 0 pass rush wins. So he just pushes the tackle back until it's considered a pressure, but he can't convert it into a win, because a win is counting if he can get the hands off of him. The same with why he doesn't have very many quarterback hits this year. You can't make a quarterback hit when you're engaged with the offensive tackle. So he needs coaching and development in that area. It is like the glaring weakness, but I also feel like yeah, that's not a first round pick so far, but if he could get the coaching, like, I think the potential is sky high. Like, this is why it's a low floor, high ceiling pick. You need to be able to develop from the floor to the ceiling. I think he's played at about what I thought his floor would be. So I still think there's a lot of room for growth. He's still only 22 years old, but I am at the point where it's like, I think we know what he is. It's just a little weird right now. And progression's not linear. So you could say that as well. Josh Allen was not good to start year 2. You think of things like that, and you hope that game reps can get him to play a little bit better. He could try out these moves. You could practice moves all you want, but if you don't get to try them on the field, they might not hit. So that's what I feel like Myles Murphy is at the current moment. Other than that, Joseph Ossai looks like he could rush from the interior. And some people point at Myles at doing that. I don't think I think having no moves would make you worse on the interior, or having a lack of a pass rushing repertoire, where Joseph Ossai doesn't have a great get off, when you time it. It's about average, but that average is great on the interior. And he, being a fourth-year veteran, he has moves that he can get to, that he can use against these guys. So I think he's actually better to rush from the interior than Myles or Sam. Even Sam getting put on the interior is just like, please just get off of the edge type of situation, where they need interior rush. I think that is huge for them right now. They are getting nothing outside of BJ Hill. Like, I think Chris Jenkins is interesting. I'm doing an article on him slowly, but I think he's interesting. But right now, not much of a pass rusher. McKinley Jackson hasn't been too much of a pass rusher. He can get some penetration, kind of a little bit similar to Myles in that regard, except I think Myles is a little bit better at getting his bull rush, where McKinley just kind of wins if he can beat the guy to the spot. And then nobody else is getting anything, where Jay Tufele and Zach Carter and Sheldon Rankins, when he was healthy, just gave you nothing in terms of pass rush. It's just BJ Hill. And I think it's worse than the edge, because at least like Ossai and Murphy, they got some pressures, but these guys aren't getting pressures. So it's kind of tough when you're talking about the defensive line that way. You have any other defensive thoughts from this game?
The secondary? You think of Geno Stone, Cam Taylor-Britt out there? That interception is so wild to me, because I every time I watch the defense, I'm like, I'm not encouraged. Nothing really moves me anymore, but they were able to get the turnover early. The secondary, anything really stand out for you when you watch that? Besides the CD early open touchdown?
Yeah. It felt like a lot of missed opportunities from Cooper Rush again. I have not moved off of my position that the Bengals defense looks good against quarterbacks who don't have starting level capabilities in the NFL. I think that is what it is. And Cooper Rush, to me, from this game, did not look like he was a NFL starter. So I was not that surprised that the Bengals defense was okay in the second half, because we think back on that, you can think of a lot of missed throws. There's a throw to his left that he missed to try to, on the put-away, was supposed to be a put-away drive for them, and missed opportunities where he's just holding the ball, taking a sack instead of being able to get the ball to the open receiver. I don't particularly think that they were like locked down in coverage and they got some pressure and whatever else. No, I think it was more just, I don't think it was bad from them, but guys weren't tested that normally get tested and kind of fail in those opportunities. And Cooper Rush struggled to find the open receiver. I don't think that Russell Wilson struggled in that situation. I think Lou was cooking a little bit at times, but I've seen him get cooked so much this year that I'm just not that confident. Like, there's some interesting plays, like the Trey Hendrickson, I think it was a sack where he was like an off-ball linebacker looping around. I was like, oh, that's interesting on a 3rd and long situation to get Trey a free quarterback hit. But that doesn't help you on 1st and 10. That doesn't help you on 2nd and 4. They were able to stop the run a little bit because they loaded the box up a little bit there, and Cooper Rush they dared Cooper Rush to beat them, and Cooper Rush couldn't do it. He did it early, but he couldn't keep doing it.
I thought it was going to be Cooper Rush 2.0, what we saw a few years ago, and I thought, I'm not going to be surprised. Nothing does. And defensively, I think this is a huge offseason because, look, there are going to be a lot of guys they say goodbye to. They're going to have to spend money in free agency on the defensive side of the ball. Draft, I feel like that's still going to be really focused in the first round, even if they're picking in 12 or 11, probably defensive heavy when you think about the defensive line. But I think what's important kind of going into this offseason, look, really feels like they're going to move on from Lou. But say there's a chance that they don't move on from Lou Anarumo, you have to bring in coaches who can develop those position groups. You mentioned it. Myles Murphy's 22 years old. That is huge in the NFL development. You think of McKinley Jackson, Chris Jenkins, getting a guy in there who can help develop them in that youth is going to be extremely important this offseason. And you don't want it to go to waste. you don't want to go into next year and be like, still seeing the same thing from these players. I know they're in year 2 and year 3. Don't waste this offseason. So I think the positional coaches on the defensive side will be absolutely huge. We'll see what the team decides to do, even if they were to win a few more down the stretch. But it just feels like such a development issue right now, even with Miles Murphy, who was out there more than Sam Hubbard. I feel like that's going to be it's going to be an interesting conversation going into the offseason. But yeah, the defense, look, it was Cooper Rush on the other side of the ball, and they've struggled all season. So it's really hard for me to give them too much credit. We'll see how these next few games go. Titans up next. But one thing that I was not expecting after the game, obviously fun. They were able to get the win. Joe and Ja'Marr played really well. They had a little bit of the donut smash at the end, which was great to see. The Simpsons broadcast. I'll ask you this before we move on to what Joe said. Did you watch the Simpsons broadcast?
So what I did, I didn't listen to the Simpsons broadcast, but what I did was I had the Manning cast on with volume, and then I had the Simpsons cast on my other TV just to rewatch the plays, because this is so stupid, but because they did player data tracking, this is nerdy. I could see like the all 22 on the Simpsons broadcast. Like it looks stupid, but like, and I loved it. I loved the stupid look about it. They would just replace players with Simpsons characters. So Ralph Wiggum was Ja'Marr Chase on the touchdown. And then on the first touchdown, then Lisa Simpson got to be Ja'Marr Chase on the second touchdown, spinning out Homer Simpson on the way there. And Mo, they put Mo as the one linebacker that broke up that pass on fourth down. Looked insane. But anyway, you could see some of the all 22. I thought that was kind of cool to be able to see that and see what everything was going on. But I did not listen very often to it. I turned it up a little bit since in between, instead of commercials, a lot of times they did like little interviews they did with the players. So sometimes I turned those up, but even those, they felt a little bit kid-centric at times, where I was like, I'm going to turn this back down. I'm good. But mostly listen to the Manning broadcast, but I did watch a bit of the Simpsons broadcast for replays.
There was it was a tweet earlier. I retweeted it, but somebody goes, "This is what Mo looks like when I leave him out of my parlay." And they used every wide receiver highlight you could possibly use, but Mo is on the field catching the touchdowns, and it was absolutely amazing. So I thought it was great at first. It was a little too slow for me, so I had to have the regular broadcast on.
Yeah, that was the biggest issue, wasn't it? Because they did the tracking to figure it out. They were like 2 plays behind at all times.
Yeah. But hey, you know what? It was December. Both teams are pretty much out of it, and I can appreciate the creativity with the Simpsons characters, and it brought a lot of memes, so I actually enjoyed it. But I was not expecting this. After the game, Joe Burrow was talking to the media, and he was brought up, going out on the field. I thought it was really cool because I don't really know that the Bengals have done this a whole lot, where they bring out Ja'Marr, Joe, and T as the captains before the coin toss, and they did. So I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. And he was asked about it, and Joe mentioned that he feels confident that they can make it work with T. Higgins. We've heard Joe Burrow say this before. It was last year before the franchise tag announcement. The Bengals could double tag T. Higgins. They honestly have money to pay both wide receivers. It can happen. Look around the league. Even though Ja'Marr is going to make the highest paid contract from a wide receiver in NFL history, they could still make it work. What did you think about Joe Burrow's comments? Were you a little surprised on a December Monday Night Football night, Joe Burrow's bringing this up?
I think it's a star quarterback exercising what leverage he has to be able to push for the front office to make that deal. Who knows if it'll work? I would bet against it. But I find it interesting because that's probably the only way they do make the deal, is if Joe makes it very clear that he's not going to be happy if they let him walk, which is kind of what he's currently doing. I also think if you listen to it, it sounds a little less confident than reading it. Reading it, you go, whoa. And then listening to it, it was kind of, it was a lot of pauses. I'm confident we're going to be able to do what it takes to get him back. It's just like, are you confident? Reading that, I thought you were, but listening, I'm not sure. And then when they interviewed T. Higgins later, it was like, it seemed like he had no idea that there was some shot at this. It's like, I never ruled Cincinnati out, but in my brain, I'm thinking like, yeah, he didn't rule them out because if they come and up the offer, like he'll sign, but that would require them to up the offer, where it feels like they've been stalemated on this deal for, I think, over a year. I think they should, just in terms of they can't pay anybody else on this team. He's a good player, even this game notwithstanding. And trying to pay for all the free agents to me is a little bit of fool's gold, where a lot of you're more likely to strike out in free agency than you are to hit home runs. Whereas signing your own guys to big deals, I think you're more likely to see the return on investment there. I think what the Bengals did in 2021 was a bit of an anomaly. Just being able to get Reeder and Hendrickson and Cheeto and Bell and get these guys to all play at their absolute best. And we've seen that since then because they've tried to recreate it multiple times since then. Nick Scott was supposed to be like a Von Bell type of signing. And you could think of Sheldon Rankins this year, like, oh, yeah, we're going to go find another defensive tackle that's under the radar. And these aren't working. Even Zach Moss, they go like, oh, we're getting under the radar running back, save some money. That didn't work too well. Like, you got a good pass protector. You did get a guy that I felt like was struggling running the ball in this offense. There's just a lot of variables you don't know about how a guy's going to fit into your team when you're getting them from external free agency versus, T. Higgins will be very good if he's signed. The only thing that could stop that is his injuries. Where other guys is just be like, he's not a fit for whatever reason. Maybe for these offensive linemen, they're not a fit because they don't want to drop back and pass protect 45 times in a game. Maybe for the defensive tackles, they're lining up a little tighter than they used to. They have to play with even feet. They can't fire off the ball like they used to. These are things I think of with Sheldon Rankins or why he might not have worked out. It was also age with him. He's over 30, but he's not allowed to fire off the ball in this defense. He has to, play the run first and be gap sound and play the run and then rush the passer versus play the run on the way to rushing the passer. Like one of those has priority in this defense. So we'll see. And it seems like no safeties have come in as a free agent signing and worked out. I don't know if that's specifically on this defense because it's not like Nick Scott then went and was as good as they thought he would be in Carolina. I think, he's been a low-end starter where he's gone. So I don't know. But that's just my worry is if they don't sign T, what do you spend that money on? It might be exciting in March and April that they got, oh, look at these free agents they got. But will it be exciting in December? Because I think the excitement for a lot of the guys they signed this offseason, all-time high heading into the season. But that's not when you win the league. You don't win a Super Bowl in March. You win a Super Bowl in February. So are they going to be quality contributors in February?
Yeah, no, I think it's a good question. And one of the biggest things, and I'll always kind of look at the safety room and say, and I've said it before, kind of a couple months ago when it comes to the poor safety play, I was wrong. I thought they would be fine when they let Jesse go and that they could figure it out. There'd be enough players who would step up, even if it's a free agent who might be a level down from him or a couple levels down. They would figure it out. It wouldn't be one player that could really change things. But when I look at the defense this year, even DJ Reeder and Jesse Bates could have saved this season on the defensive side of the ball. I truly believe that when it comes to a couple of the players on that side because of how dominant they were and what they're able to do for the defenses they're playing on now. So I think you have to learn from mistakes, and not that DJ Reeder was a homegrown talent, but for T. Higgins and Jesse Bates. Honestly, we've said it before on this podcast. Kevin Zeitler is still an example when you look at him and what he's able to do in this league. Stop letting your homegrown talent leave. You want to go, you could spend money everywhere. They're going to have plenty of money. And, just signing a huge superstar free agent doesn't mean he's going to come to Cincinnati and be awesome. You already know what T. Higgins is. So just do it. Get it done. But I agree with you when it comes to what Joe said. I'm not super confident that it's still going to happen just because they've struggled getting these discussions ongoing with T. Higgins and T. Higgins agency. I just think that Ja'Marr Chase will get done and we'll see with T. Higgins, but it would be great. And I appreciate Joe speaking out in those moments. We're not hearing from the front office. So he's using that moment on post-game Monday Night Football. It's going to be the big story on Tuesday morning on these sports shows. Post the recap of the Dallas Bengals game is, did you hear what Joe Burrow said about T. Higgins and bringing T. Higgins back? And that puts the pressure on the front office. And the front office needs that pressure from their franchise quarterback. So we'll see what it looks like. There's still plenty of time to talk about what the Cincinnati Bengals will do. And they're going to actually have to make that decision pretty soon when the offseason gets here. If it's a double tag or if there's an extension or if they just let T walk for nothing, which will be really devastating to get absolutely nothing for T. Higgins. So we'll see. But outside of that, Mike, anything to recap from that game?
No, I'm still just dumbfounded about that blocked punt where if you could go second by second with the win probability on that, I would imagine it had to have been like 99% Cowboys, maybe more like 90 because the
Yeah.
Bengals had 3 timeouts, whatever. But like 90% Cowboys win once it was blocked. And then like 3 seconds later, it swings all the way to like 70% Bengals. Like, what a swing that could be. Like, it was probably already the biggest swing of the game to be able to get the ball back in that situation. But to go from the punt is blocked, like, I just assumed, what a Bengals game. This is what I've watched all season. Yeah. To then that guy lining up, he couldn't even get anywhere. He's trying to recover that and run it back. He runs straight into Jung Meta. And wow, that was an incredibly dumb play. And Jung Meta to be the guy that gives up the block to former Bengal Nick Vigil, and then to go also make that recovery still. I think there will be coaches that'll point to like, hey, the play's not over just because you made a mistake. Like, go make it right type of situation. So I could see that being used as an example of like, look, he stunk early on this play. He got beat. He gave him a blocked punt. Hustle downfield, good things happen.
Yeah, and it's crazy to think because I agree with you when it comes to the win probability. Because if you think about the Bengals on that drive on the offensive side of the ball, it was so sloppy, it was so bad. It was like, okay, this game is really over. They had a shot to go down the field, win the game, and it was crazy. Just the way this season has gone, for it to flip like that was pretty incredible. And special teams, shout out to Cade York. Look, I'm not buying into the stock yet because it was only pretty minor things that he was able to do in the game, but he didn't miss a kick, and that is a positive. He maybe gives Evan a little competition in the offseason, but there's plenty of games to go, so we'll see what that looks like. Hopefully Cade York makes all of his field goals and extra points as we get down the stretch. But yeah, I'm here for some exciting football. Let it be fun. Let's see the youth, and hopefully these guys continue to develop as we see the final 4 games. Mike has a good piece coming out soon on Chris Jenkins. When's that coming out?
I'm still watching. I'm going back and watching every snap, so it's taking a while watching every snap of his, and then I've watched this game too, so I had a wrench thrown in there where I did not finish watching every snap he had during the weekend, so gonna have to keep watching during the week.
Go check it out. Mike has awesome breakdowns after the game. Bengals_Sands over on Twitter. You can follow me at LNDS Patterson. Thank you as always for listening to It's Always Game Day in Cincinnati.